One more thing.
One more thing. One more thing.
Oh, hello and welcome to a very, very special episode of One More Thing, these deep and meaningful conversations with inspiring and innovative artists across the bass music universe. Today, I am joined by two incredible guests. Together, they form Scar. It is Survival and Script, two OGs of the scene representing Metalheadz. They've literally today, on the day that we're recording this, have just dropped their third album, The Road Less Traveled. How you going? How you going? How are you doing, guys?
Yeah,
We're going
well,
and doing
thank
all
you.
right.
Good.
Awesome,
Yeah, good,
awesome. I love catching people on release day because this is like what everything's been building up to now for the last, I mean, we'll find out how long we've been working on the album, but everything has been building up to this day for you guys for quite a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, totally. You know, it's always it's always nice to see this day finally arrive because you know, as most people probably gather, you know, it could take quite a while, and you know, I think we tried to we started that album quite a long time ago. Some of the very early tracks, maybe 2 or 3 years, I suppose, and sort of the whole COVID thing kind of just sort of put things on pause, and you know, we decided to hold tight really, just because a lot of the tunes are quite dance floor, and it'd just be such a shame to have a load of songs out, and you know, so it's kind of weird. You know, a lot of the songs on this album uh, we did quite a while ago, but it's actually quite nice because we managed to revisit the whole thing at the beginning of this year and sort of spruced it all up a little bit, made some changes, and you know, kind of tweaked it. So hopefully, it's sort of the best it can be now.
Right. Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a privilege that a lot of artists don't get to have, really, is it? Being able to go back over the album and kind of fine tune it and smooth it out even more, or, you know, kind of go back and revisit things for another round. Like a lot of artists wouldn't get that. That's kind of because of the lockdown.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I mean, totally. Yeah, exactly. I think if you're going to look for a positive, and there's not many positives, is there? Let's face it. You know, I'm quite frankly, I would have rather it come out 2 years ago. You know,
Yeah.
but in hindsight, I think it's actually a better record for it. And
I agree.
you know, like like you said, it's a rare opportunity to be able to sort of sit there with that big body. It's got a big body of work as well. I think that we might have even added 1 or 2 tunes. I'm pretty sure we did actually to the original lineup. You know, just because as well, you get bored of them. It's hard to, you know, it's hard to play them out even, especially when you've heard them so many times. And obviously, people are just hearing this now and they're fresh. But for instance, the actual tune, "The Road Less Travel," I think oh man, I mean, maybe 2020. I think we might have started that.
Yeah.
So how long was that? 2 years old. So even I'm going to be, it wouldn't even surprise me if it was the end of 2019. So like,
Yeah.
So you know, but it's a different version to the original one. Like I say, you know, we've managed to sit there, go and have a little fiddle. But yeah.
Yeah, wow. Because I mean, we spoke exactly 3 years ago at the end of, it was mid-November 2019, when none of us even knew what a COVID was or anything like that. You literally just dropped your second album, and you said you already had 16 or 17 tunes in the bag post that as well. So I'm wondering if there was like any kind of remnants of that body of work and those new tunes that you just got straight on, like you'd finished the album and then bang, you cracked on with another load of tunes.
Yes, exactly that actually. Yeah, we have got another load of tunes in the bag.
No,
The
tunes that we talked about. Well, the tunes that we talked about. Yeah, that's exactly what that was. So you know, we had like maybe 15, 16 tracks.
Yeah.
We decided to put a pause to see how the whole thing played out in 2020 would have been.
Yeah.
So 2020, we sort of just put the whole project. We said, look, you know, we chatted with Ant and G, and we're like, look, let's just hold tight, see how this plays out, because you know, we were really happy with a lot of the songs on there, and you listen to the album, you know, it's not too different to that, you know, to that original lineup, and it would just been a real shame if they didn't get the kind of, you know, the being played in the club. So that was the whole point, just to hold tight a little bit. But then obviously in the meantime, there's not much else to do, was there? Let's face it.
No.
You know, whether that was just sort of writing things remotely, and then, you know, when we were, you know, going around, you know, each other's house and, you know, once a week and stuff like that. So there wasn't really much to do but write more tunes. And then we sort of got, I suppose, to the summer last year, and we were like, look, man, let's just make this the best album we possibly can. Rather than going, right, we've got this album, it's done, you've got this body of work, it's done. We had all these other tunes, maybe, you know, three or four other records. And we were just like, you know what, let's just make this the best Scar album. And you know, if we can try and get rid of any filler, any tunes that, because we probably written another 5, 6, 7, maybe more. I think. I mean, I don't know. I kind of lose track a little bit, but that was the thing. Let's just make this the best it can be. You know what I mean? And fingers crossed we did that. I hope.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good opportunity to do that. We'd written, like you said, we'd written a load of tunes as well, and like during that time, we were around each other's house a lot, and it was, it was one of the things that saved us. Actually, saved our heads during COVID. Yeah, saved our sanity. And
I was going to ask because there was something that I took home from the last interview was that no Scar tune is ever done remotely. You have to be together. You always have to be together. And I think, like how did lockdowns and stuff affected that? Because I remember seeing
when literally, the day that we were allowed to, we legally allowed to do it, we did. Do you know what I mean? We needed to, you know what I mean? You know how it was like. You have your own outlet, and you just need to do it. So we were fortunate, I suppose. We were fortunate in the laws that we had over here that allowed, one person to go to one person's house, etc. So we did it, and I know it saved my sanity for absolute sure. It saved my sanity, and it made those sessions, I'd say, probably some of the most important sessions that we've ever had. Obviously that's making tunes that we haven't released so far, that you haven't heard or anyone's heard, and also with going back in on that album, because it meant that, we had this time and we have this experience, and why not make it the absolute best that we possibly can? So we did. Steve's right. We went back in on them. Do you know what I mean? And we made them sonically as good as we possibly can, and as enjoyable as we possibly can. So yeah, I have to bow down to Steve's superior knowledge when it comes down to these things. He's right. He was right, and well, he was right, and they
that hurt there, didn't it, Mike?
But why not? Yeah, but why not make something as good as it possibly can be? If we can make it better, make it better. It's something I quite often say to Steve in the studio. Let's make it better. But it's a good thing. So I have to big him up for that. For absolutely sure. So big up to Steve.
I think that's beautiful. And it kind of adds then, like you really valued that time that you had together then during those moments. Because I remember seeing pictures on your Facebook, Mike, of like you were having a socially distanced barbecue at one point, and I think a studio
my car park, in
that. Yeah, in your car park. I'm in the sticks,
yeah. So I missed my friends a lot. I had my family around me. I was really, really lucky to have my family around me. Some people were just stuck on their own completely. But I was really missing my friends in London, in Bristol. And I remember your pictures really specifically, Mike, because it was like, go on, like there's people out there starting to live a normal life again. I mean, it wasn't normal, but compared to where we'd come from, that did feel normal, seeing what you guys were doing there.
It was his birthday, actually.
You must have really treasured
that was my birthday. Yeah, that was my birthday. And obviously, to cap it all off, he's not bad with a bit of meat on the barbie, or a bit of vegetarian food on the barbie either. So,
what are your memories of that time, Steve?
I mean, like Michael's saying, as soon as we sort of managed to get in the studio together, I think we probably had a few months off. I can't even remember.
Which was a good thing. Which was a bit of a haze,
yeah. But also, I think it was nice to get, you like I said, we, obviously talking to you the end of 2019. I didn't even realise it was that long ago, actually. So, in 2019, and it just gives you a couple of 6 months just to chill out, and I mean, to be honest with you, I'll say to my wife, because we were both sort of stuck in the houses, like, this is the most amount of time we'll probably spend together, until we kind of retire. And we did get divorced, so that's probably good. That's a good look, isn't it? So I kind of enjoyed that time. I mean, we were lucky that we could, and getting back in the studio, and also just being able to cook, and there was nothing else to do really, was there? Drink wine, cook food, I still had a lot of my catering contacts, so I still have. So we could get a lot of stuff delivered, the fruit and veg and meat and fish and all the rest of it. So I we just sort of ate a lot. I did a lot of running, otherwise I'd be about 18, 20 stone by now. And then getting back in the studio with Mike, sort of just, it started to give that little bit of normality again, doesn't it? And yeah.
Go on. So when did the title track and the concept, when did you decide that the album was going to be called Road Less Traveled? And what
Oh,
inspired that? I love the Road Less
well, you
Traveled.
said
Road
it.
Less
You
Traveled is
said
always the best.
you said that we told you we had it done in 2019, so it must be 2019.
Yeah.
Something like that, anyway. Like I said, it's a blur, mate. I mean, what even year is this? Yeah, 2020, end of 2022. I mean, Jesus, it's
I
that's
think
like
that I
4
think
years, isn't it?
we I mean, I quite like to get into meanings of tunes and stuff like that and find these weird, quirky reasons why to call a tune or why to call an album an album. Steve laughs at me for it, but you know, I think that basically, like the title tune of this album, it tells a story of us, really. Do you know what I mean? And there's kind of styles of drum and bass that we like to make. There's no particular, you know, it takes you. It is. I hate the cliche, but it's a real journey track. Do you know what I mean? It takes you through all different types of soundscapes, all different types of moods and feelings. I don't think in a lot of drum and bass tunes they're made and that's the tune. It's this kind of tune or that kind of tune. The road less traveled is a road less traveled. It's not the road that a lot of tunes are made in that vein that take you through all different moods within that 5 or 6 minutes of a tune. And I mean, I'm speaking for myself. You know, that tells the story of the album as well. You know, it's not just a dance floor album. It's not just a liquid album. It's not just a bass album. It takes you through you know the road that's less travelled. You know,
It's
so
an everything album. It's really does you. It's a homage to all the different styles and all the different flavors, the
yeah,
whole spectrum in that type of way.
absolutely. And there are these little links. These days, people don't listen to an album as an album, do they? Do you know what I mean? They don't listen. You know how we used to do it? Again, it's cliche. We put the first track on and we'd listen to it all the way through. Then the next track. Just pick they quickly flick through and they'll pick a track that they like. Do you know what I mean? And then go down. But I still think it's important to do a track list in a kind of like to tell a story of an album to take you through, and that's what we kind of did with this album as well. And the little interludes aren't just interludes or soundscapes; they're genuine. They're genuine roads or little avenues that take you from one section to another, but not in a jerky way. It's like, it's quite an understanding sort of way.
I can really feel that, especially on like Computerized Humanity is my favorite out of all of those ones, really.
I love that track.
Yeah, they're kind of these really interesting bridges which break it up, but like you say, take you from one area to the next in that type of way. How did those particular tracks come about? Do you kind of look at the main drum and bass tracks that you've got and think, right, these are the connections that we've got to make, or do they just come about while you're both experimenting together during your sessions?
I think the original concept for that album was to try to put it together as a mix, if you like, you know, because you know when you consume this music, you know it's always mixed. You hear in like the middle bits of the tunes or whatever, you know, and it's just trying to get that. I always feel like if you're listening to this music, you've always got like a minute of crap you don't want to listen to at the beginning, and people get lazy at the ends, don't they? And you just loop it out and you know. So what we wanted to do originally was to just try and have the album flow as more of a mix, you know. So have really interesting ends of songs, and you know, to kind of segue in between, whether they all join together or not. I mean, we've experimented with all sorts of stuff, but that sort of was the initial thing. So a lot of those little kind of weird interludes and stuff, and actually some of them were just beginning as a songs that, you know, it's actually just sounds good as a little piece of music. It was really just try and, like I said, just try and segue in between them, so you had a little bit more of a flow. And I think there's a few tracks on there as well just end really weirdly, you know, and you know, so it almost goes off in a complete different direction. And that was just, again, it's like if you've got these interludes, and you know, I mean, just thinking about how people stream music. I mean, are you really going to, you know, put one of those 10-second interludes on your phone or download it? You're probably not. But if it's stuck on the end of a tune, then if you forget to push fast forward or whatever, when you're bored listening to it, then you get this sort of like, you know, so that kind of was the idea,
Yeah.
you know, and then some of them just went to be their own standalone thing. But I think actually I think originally all those interludes were joined onto tunes.
They were.
So
Right,
so that was just one tune. It might have been 11 minutes,
Yeah.
and then 3 minutes at the end, just some random sound effects or you know. So I think that's sort of how they came about. And then just going through it and just hate, you know, and obviously when it starts testing to other people, it's like, no, I think we should do this. Maybe you can make this one, you know, standalone things. And then, you know, we kept like the sort of weird second endings and all the rest of it. And also just try not to get the track count going to like any harder than it is, you know.
Yeah, well, I think like it definitely works, and what you've done there definitely paid off. Because I had you sent me the Dropbox version ages ago, Mike. I was really lucky to hear it a good couple of months ago. And when you've got a Dropbox version, you've got to go back in and press play then with every track. So I asked if there was a streaming version a couple of weeks ago, so I could drive along and listen to it. And the whole experience, my relationship with the album and my understanding of the album changed as I listened to it as a start to finish.
An album. Yeah,
trip,
good.
if you like, really, for want of a better cliche, really. And I think you really feel that, you know, and I think you do on any album, really. The art of the album will always have that value, really. You can tell when it's a proper journey and a meaningful experience as opposed to a collection of bangers, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad that came across in how you listen to it. I hope that a lot of people will take the opportunity to listen to it like that, because it does tell a story. It tells our story as well, you know. And yeah, so I'm really pleased. So that's a thumbs up. Nice, Dave.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I went through the older albums as well, like the Orchid Project as well. And every album is very, very different. And when we spoke about High Fives and Devil Eyes, there was that we talked about that being a love letter to drum and bass, full stop. But this is like even more detail where you're zoning in on particular sounds and particular influences and sounds that you guys have come from, really. Like Bravo Tango for me sounds like a massive hat tip to Crust and the Bristol sound.
It absolutely is.
And what else is there as well? Like Santa Cruz, like feels like a really nice love letter to Creative Source and stuff like that. Like this is you guys really kind of putting your heart out to all of the sounds that you've either been affiliated with or played as DJs or just retained your love for drum and bass and kept you engaged with this movement that's always changing.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of the whole point. I think, you know, is just to recreate the things that inspired you, and we very much did that with this one as well. And you know, yeah, I mean that's what we get off on. It's just like, you know, it's like, oh, I love that tune. If you could do something that in your own mind, you might actually not sound anything like it. And generally, when you sit down and go, you know, you get inspired by something, and you know, but it just gives you that little buzz again. You know, it's like that little kind of high that you maybe listened to when you first listened to, you know, a Crust track or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's that little homage or just. But I mean, even that it's not until afterwards, really. I think, you know, I've never really sat down at a computer and gone, oh, you know, halfway through, oh, this sounds like this sounds like that. It's all just get there afterwards. Like, oh yeah, actually that's a good point. Or someone else might mention it, you know, actually. So yeah,
like at the end of the kind of session or when you listen back to it, like, wow, we were on a bit of a Bristol buzz that day, weren't we?
Yeah. We've done a few tunes like that lately, actually, as well. It's kind of, and it's not really a conscious thing. It just all can happen, I suppose. And well, especially when you look back at a few tunes, you can see little. I don't know. I mean, I tend to do that as a producer and working with Mike comes out as well. You get a little idea or get a little vibe, and then there might be like 3 or 4 tracks like that. Maybe sometimes even more, you know. And then it's all kind of move on to the next little vibe, and you know what I mean.
Yeah. And having Naomi Pryor on the album was a really nice touch as well, and nod back to the Orchid Project as well. So how did that?
So that was one of the new tunes. So that was something that was done. Yeah, originally it might have been just the end of last year or beginning of this year, and we actually had that vocal for a little while. We
had a few sort of R&B kind of tunes that we made, which I still love. Actually, we still got them with her, and that was one of the vocals from that. But you remember, you said to me you really thought that might fit well into a drum and bass track, and then we had to go with that.
Steve can't
something
remember.
like that anyway.
Steve's like, was it? Yeah, but yeah, that is what it was. I think it was anyway.
So you've got some. There are ska R&B tracks then somewhere.
Not really ska. I mean, we did that whole.
Orchid,
when we did the Orchid stuff with Naomi,
yeah.
we did a lot of that. I'm not going to say that they're not R&B. I don't know what Mike's talking about. They're sort of just they're just no, Mike. They ain't R&B, mate. We just did a lot of down tempo stuff. I'm just going to put that out there now. It wasn't R&B in the slightest.
I mean,
it was kind of down. It was
R&B.
like they were just slow. They were just down tempo, sort of easy listening, kind of like maybe there's influences from R&B or soul music, more soul. And actually, a lot of the time for me, it was the whole kind of Bristol 90s Massive Attack, Portishead. That had a massive influence on me, and the real inspiration, the real inspiration for the songs on the Orchid Project, and then go forward really was that, you know what I mean, and trying to do that style but updated, you know, because you know what I mean. As much as I'd love to put break beats and slow down drums, all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean. It starts to sound very 90s, so it's just like let's try and take that vibe and do something with a more of a modern sound palette, you know, and that's how that vocal came about. I'm really trying to think of what the actual song was, but yeah, Mike was right. It's just like, you know, you sort of sometimes we did quite a big body of work with Naomi for the Orchid Project, and sometimes you sort of just sit and listen on the computer, and you start going back through old folders, and you're like, oh damn, this is actually, you know, especially with a couple of years of forgetting about it, you know, because sometimes when you're trying to finish something, you get stuck, you know, and sometimes that bit of time you just go bang, literally straight away, you know what I mean. As soon as you heard it again, it's like, I know exactly what that means, you know. I've probably deleted everything and keeping the vocal, something like that anyway. Yeah.
Go on. I love how music can just transport you back to that kind of time, and it's like an audio diary in that type of way. But I think, like Naomi, if I remember correctly from previous interviews, Naomi she was the trigger for that first album, really, wasn't she? The Orchid Project. Without her vocals, it might not have come about in the same way that it did.
To have somebody that was willing and to put the effort and time in, to do a project like that, you know, it's quite a rare thing, and you know, and somebody that's so talented as well, you could just send her a loop and then bang, you got like, I'll have 100 tracks of bloody vocals to sit and go through, you know, and you just think, wow, you know. So
it's incredible.
You know, so if it wasn't for her, it would have been a completely different thing. And so obviously it's always a pleasure to sort of sit and revisit that, and it's great to get you know, we were really chuffed to be able to get that on the album.
Yeah,
that whole thing was done remotely. We spoke on the phone a few times. Obviously, as the project progressed, we'd speak a lot more. And then we met for the first and only time when I was on tour over in Australia. So,
wow.
So we did a couple of gigs together where she kind of sung a few things. It must have been 2017 or 18 or something like that, maybe a year. I can't quite remember. But so we met each other for the first time, and ended up. I know her sister quite well anyway, and just sort of kind of Sydney drum and bass scene. But we did a few gigs, and it was great fun. But it's a weird thing as well, because you get to know somebody without actually even really see what they look like. Well, I knew what she looked like, but obviously it's different in person, isn't it? You know.
Massively. That's a sign of the times, really, I guess. And that's what makes like ska special, is the fact that, you know, kind of you two are such long mates, you know, going back and write everything in person, that it's quite traditional in that sense, you know, compared to lots of other connections and relationships that we have these days, electronically and digitally. You two it runs much deeper for ska, doesn't it?
I just don't think, I personally, and again, it's probably my age, but I just think when you collaborate with somebody, you bounce it off each other's ideas. That's the whole point. Otherwise, you just writing a song with half of it done already. I mean, you know, I've never written I'm just trying to double check on. I mean, I don't remember ever writing a song with anybody else online like that. I'm pretty certain I've never done it. All the collabs were at least started in person, you know. So someone come around here, or you know, I think Kronk, wherever, you know, when Charlie came to me, you know, Break came to me, and we did that track for D-Bridge. I think maybe I finished it when he got, you know what I mean. But they've got the body the same when I went and worked with him and most other people. It just seems really weird to me to write to a collab where you're just writing what do you do? Just write a couple of drums or write. You end up finishing a tune, you know, and it's just, and then it's like, would you just go and undo it all? And then you haven't got you know, you're working with chunks of audio, you know, like bits of tape, if you like, and you can't go in and change things the way you would, or do you know what I mean? But that's about working with people you know and you like. I don't think I've ever been into the studio and collabed with somebody that I didn't really know. And the reason why we got together and wrote a song together is because we enjoyed spending time, or we had a vibe. And do you know what I mean? It could be, you know, like all the people that we've collabed with, I collabed with, especially in Survival. I did quite a lot of music with other people, and they're all friends. They're all friends of mine, and we had a friendship before we sat in the studio. Like I can't think of another example, you know. So
yeah,
I suppose in that respect,
much more
then you haven't
social
got
experience for you. Then,
well, you haven't got that pressure.
It's not a collab for the sake of collabs. It's a collab because you want to spend time with each other and see what you can create with each other. Really.
Well, just because it's a laugh, isn't it? I mean, if you enjoy doing something and you enjoy spending time with somebody, then it's even better. You can, you know, sometimes especially if you work on your own as an artist, it's a kind of lonely thing, and it's just sitting around on your own all day doing nothing, and you're not doing nothing, but you're sitting around on your own all day, you know.
Yeah, rattling around in your own head all of the time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and when it becomes day in, day out, and that's all you're doing, you know, especially if you live on your own, you go weeks without seeing anyone. You know, I mean, I for the majority of the work I did as Survival, I had like a routine. I'd get up, go to the cafe, have a fry up, read the paper, at least just be around people. Come back home at about 11, work till about 7. You know, but then if I didn't do that, then I'd just be indoors all day. Probably wouldn't have even left the house. You know, and you sort of doing that for 5 days. You know what I mean? So yeah, kind of actually being in a room with somebody else, or making a trip to Bristol to go and see. To see Break, or to go and see DLR, or when everyone did that big exodus to Bristol, you know, sort of back in 2006 or 7, wasn't it? Something like that. It seemed half a drum and bass scene. So it's like you can get out and go stay around someone's house for a while, you know.
Yeah, completely. What was the very, very first Survival and Script collaboration then, when you guys realized, long before kind of Scar, you know, before you decided to kind of really form an actual act, but what was the first ever collaboration you two did?
It was when? Yeah, it was when.
I'm gonna. This is really bad, right? I'm gonna have to just run into my kitchen and turn something off before I burn. You carry on talking quickly.
Yeah, it was a track called When, which was actually signed by Metalheadz, and it came out on their Platinum Breaks 4 album, which was just mind-blowing, to be honest with you. But yeah, it was a track called When. We wrote it pretty quickly as well, and again, because Steve said, because we got on so well, beforehand, and we had a good laugh, and we got on so well. We made this tune, we enjoyed each other's company. I was learning back then, learning a lot. And Steve was happy to help me with that process as well. So we carried on making tunes, and after about 5 or 6 tunes, we you know, after a couple of months, really, we kind of looked at each other and we were like, you know, we write some good tunes together, and then we decided to play them to Ant, and he was like, "This is good stuff, boys. You know, this is good. Maybe you two should think about doing some stuff together." And then you know, and that's how it all started. But yeah, it was a track.
No. I'm going to stop you there. I'm not giving Ant credit for that. I'm stopping you there right there. I'm not giving Ant credit for that at all.
Brilliant.
He's put some great tunes out, and he's supported us, and he's like, you know, he's a very, very good friend. But I'm not giving him credit for us starting.
Yeah. All right. Well, basically, you know, we decided that it was a good thing to do. We just worked well together. We bounced off each other well, and you know, it just seemed that. Also, it seemed that the first tunes that we started writing together, they all pretty much got signed. So it was like, you know, we other people think we're doing some good stuff as well. So, you know, we just concentrated more and more on doing it, and then it turned into a weekly thing. You know, I'd go to the studio or to Steve's every week, and then sometimes twice a week, and that's still how it is today.
I think as far as Ant is concerned, if you're going to, I was going to go and touch back on that quick, is when he got that job with Metalheadz. So this was just, we started Scar just
Oh
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
he was
yeah,
doing
yeah,
the events, and it was me, Mike, and we basically sat down after doing one or two tunes. Obviously, I wanted to do a project that was different from Survival. Didn't want to just keep releasing stuff on Dispatch and all the other labels I'd done. So I was trying to do something a little bit different with Mike. And when Ant obviously had that in with Metalheadz, it was like, right, we want this project to be on Metalheadz. And
yeah.
from the day we started the Scar project, it was always directed at that label. And like anything, you know, when you've got that in there, and obviously I've worked with Ant for a long time, he's a good close friend of mine. So, you know, we was like, right, this is our project. We really want, you know, can you play this to G, see what he thinks? And luckily, obviously, G was on board. So, you know, that's sort of how that happened. But it was always, we've always set out to sort of to direct it at Heads. You know, that was always the intention.
Yeah. And I think that's going to set a context then, isn't it? With a label with a legacy and a sound and an influence as strong as Metalheadz and a consistency as well, that then creates a context for which you can write within. Then that gives you, so you're not just writing on a blank canvas where you're writing to Metalheadz and you're making music for that label.
100%. Yeah. And I've always liked that, and especially if when you work with other people, or I do done all sorts of various projects myself as well. So you just want it to be different, and having a sort of framework to work with it, you know, always helps. And whether that's with music or food as well, actually, you know, it's kind of just creatively sometimes when you just got a huge blank canvas and you go, well, what the hell am I meant to be doing? You know, and I've sat down at the studio. I sat at the computer and Survival and a script and worked with some of the other things I've done. And you just think, I don't know what I'm meant to be doing anymore. You know? And it's like, what am I doing? You know, sometimes when I sit and try and write Survival stuff now, I'm like, oh, I don't know what is a Survival tune, you know? Yeah. And but so having that thing there where we set out that project like that, really helps. It's like, oh, like, I know exactly what that is. You know, this is this project for that, but also not trying to do the whole cliched, you know, okay, it's going on metal, let's put like a Mentasm or, you know, sort of, you know, it's to avoid that, you know what I mean? And hopefully we do use some of those classic sounds, I know that, but hopefully to try to, you know, move away from that. You know?
Yeah, it's not, they're not treading over old ground in that type of way or pandering to anything the Metalheadz have done. They could go on other labels in that way, but they've got that, they build on the legacy of Metalheadz in that.
I think sometimes it's a mistake as an artist, you saying, right, I want to write a song for Dispatch. It's just write a load of stuff that Dispatch already put out, you know, to do a clone of one of my tunes or one of Jay's tunes or Octane DLR. Or, do you know what I mean? That's the biggest mistake, I think, especially people coming through. And I know if you speak to A&Rs and label managers, that's the biggest turn off. It's like, no, I want to hear something new, you know what I mean? And not just keep going. I don't want to hear just a regurgitated thing that you think I'm like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
He's already got a filth or a reckless or things like that. He's going to want something fresh, like in that way, really. Any A&R person is. I guess that would be the equivalent then of somebody coming to you with a dish which is too similar. So like, oh, what do you think of my cooking? And coming up with a dish which is really similar to your cooking or something like that, really. The same applies for any kind of creative discipline in that way, I guess.
I think so. I think if you're going to work in a restaurant and people just don't want to eat the same old thing they've, you know, depending on the restaurant. I get it, but it depends on that framework. It depends on what you're actually trying to do, doesn't it? You know. But yeah, you know, you want to be surprised. You want maybe a little nod. There's ways of nodding to a genre or to a style without, you know, using those ingredients that are sort of, you know, classic. If you know what I mean. Yeah. You know, there's ways of getting there in a different way. Sort of
I think there's ways. I think there's ways, especially with Metalheadz, for example. There's ways of your music sounding like it should be on Metalheadz, but not sounding like the cliche, what people think a cliched Metalheadz track is. And also, you know, there's lots of people that do that music, and like Steve said, we don't want to just make music that other people are making, and quite frankly, are making it damn well. Do you know what I mean? So we like to make. I think I want our music to sound like it should be on Metalheadz, but not sound like Metalheadz. That's basically. I want to bring a different context to what we do.
No, that makes complete sense. Tell me about the artwork.
Well, there for
Go on,
so
Steve. You tell him about the
that's
artwork.
yeah. No, so that's actually a picture. I got quite into photography. Just well, it's through lockdown. As a guy, beginning of 2020, sort of needed to find myself a hobby because sort of all my hobbies are jobs at the moment. Food and music, and needed to find another one. So, but I've always quite liked photography, so I got quite into that. And that was the artwork is an image I took. That's actually my wife in the picture as well. In an old slate mine in North Wales in a place called Blaenau Festiniog. I was just dragging my wife around trying to sort of go like landscape photography basically. So there's like an old abandoned houses up by one of the reservoirs. So it's all kind of misty in that. So I was sort of just focusing. I was just like, right, you could just stay here for a second. I'll be back in like 10 minutes. But when me and Mike, we obviously had the name of the album. And I really wanted to do the image for the artwork, especially because I don't know, it's just quite a cool thing, isn't it? It's just like I've got like one of my pictures on an album. You know what I mean? I just really wanted to try and do that. So we've been looked out. We've been looking out, and it's like the road. Obviously, the album, that title, it obviously says something, doesn't it? So, and then my missus was like, "What about this road?" I was like, "I tell you what, right? You just walk that way." I just sat there in a tripod with my camera, and it took about 100. There's about 100 versions of that picture, something like that. Anyway,
but yeah, please try and take a good photo of a road less travelled, and mate, you smashed it with that. Though I remember when I saw that image, I was like, "That's the one. That's you smashed that with that image. Really, really good."
It's nice and it's unique, isn't it? It's not a stock image, and that was. No one's ever taken that. And my missus as well, chuffed. She's on the album as well. So
that's amazing. Like there's a real air of mystery about it, and it captures the kind of provocative title and stuff like that. So you found yourself a new hobby now, which you've already got to a level which you can put on the cover of an album that you're happy enough with to put on the cover of an album. You're just a serial turning hobbies into professions type of person, aren't you?
Well, I didn't get paid for that, so it's still a hobby.
You ain't getting paid for that, mate. You ain't getting paid for that. That's a hobby.
So how did your life in the kitchen and your dual life as a chef kind of affect? I know that they have a really positive impact on studio sessions because, again, being connected with Mike on Facebook, I see all these wonderful pictures of amazing dishes from studio sessions that you have. But how did that affect like the practicalities, especially with kind of COVID and stuff? Both of your jobs were up in the air at different points.
So COVID, it was actually all right, to be honest with you. I mean, it was difficult. I was doing little meal kits before a lot of the big restaurants really got onto that. I think in like the first week of lockdown, actually someone like a client that I'd cooked for, because I do a lot of private chefing, so going around people's houses, working with families and all this kind of thing. They messaged me and go, "Look, it's our wedding anniversary. Can you do us like a little meal?" And I was like, "Yeah, do you know what? I can." So we sort of did this like nice little Italian dinner. It's all prepackaged. I literally wrapped stuff in foil and baking paper and stuffed it in my rucksack, got on my bike and cycled to Blackheath where they lived, and sort of did this meal for them. And she's like, I think she ran some sort of blog or some online, I don't even know what it was, but she's like, "Do you want me to like sort of put this out there?" And so she did, and then I got like about 3 months worth of work out of it. I was doing like 3-4 a week, and so it sort of kept me going until things started opening up again. And then I was doing like tasting menus for couples and stuff like that. So it's quite kind of high end. You know what I mean? Like a 10-course tasting menu. It's good to get out there and do stuff. It's quite intense, obviously, standing there with a couple eating dinner together. But you sort of
I know that obviously there's client confidentiality here, so I'm pushing it a little bit, but that could end up being quite awkward in certain circumstances.
I think if I just stood there, no, never, no. I mean, I think obviously the MasterChef thing and that people want to talk about it anyway. So if it's just a chef going in someone's house, maybe there's not so much to talk about. But I was, people want to converse with you, and actually, if you're still sitting there just not talking, then it's weird. I'm just like, what, listening to your conversation?
Thing, yeah.
I mean, I actually went back to this person's house about 4 or 5 times, I think. They had like a little breakfast bar, so they were like 2 foot away from me. So we're just cooking like on and there's obviously nowhere to hide if I mess something up. I mean, it's like sitting in front of us, aren't they? But that was quite good. And then so the whole kind of COVID, that sort of worked quite, you know what I mean? It actually worked well. So you had to kind of give me a bit more time. But then at the end of 2021, we just got the whole thing just died, and the whole, you know, that other lockdown just absolutely killed it. I think people started to worry about sort of cost of living started going up, and the whole you started to see the prices increase and all the rest of it. And I actually ended up working in a fish restaurant at the beginning of this year. I was a head chef there,
Oh, wow.
and I was doing that for quite a while, and that's when things get difficult. I was doing a 50 hour week, 40, 50 hours over like 4 days. And then the 3 days I had off was absolutely just so tired. It was very, very difficult to sit in the studio and do stuff. We sort of managed for the first few months, but then as time got on, it just, you know, you sort of just end up burning out. And, you know, it was a real hard sort of juggling act to suddenly switch off and be, you know, sort of creative in a completely different way when I'm still thinking about shit that I, you know, clean out the fridge, or did I, you know, do this? Have I put orders in for Thursday, or you know what I mean? It's like, oh crap, how much, you know? Anyway, so that it is hard. It is really difficult.
You did,
yeah. No, the thing is, as well though, Dave, we'd written a body of music. You know, I think Mike mentioned earlier as well. You know, obviously we finished that LP. We had a load of other tunes. They've gone into the LP, but it wasn't, you know, obviously not all of them. And you know, at the beginning of this year, we sort of sat and probably got a nice folder there. You know, so even if we stop working now for the end of the year, you know, it's not really going to make a difference to our release schedule next year either. So it's just like, you know, it kind of is what it is. And but I'm not. So that sort of ended about a month ago. So it's been nice to sort of concentrate back on the music and
actually have a bit of your life back again.
Have my whole life back again. You know, I think it's hard to underestimate how much pressure takes out of you, and how, you know, especially to do it well, it's really consuming, and it's hard to do other stuff, you know.
I was very surprised that you were able to make time to make music for a while, because I could see it was very, 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 very tough on you. It made you extremely tired. Do you know what I mean?
We do about 4 hours in the studio, and then that's it.
We could manage that's about it. Yeah. But you know,
don't really do much more than that anyway.
But that's making the most of your time then, and really valuing the time. And I know that like chefing is really antisocial hours as well, really, isn't it? It's not.
So's music though, eh?
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked weekends all my life, like since I was sort of 17 when I first started doing the music. So, you know, the nights and weekends, you know, as a 16-year-old when I got kicked out of school, or just go to studio at night, and we, you know, get access to a studio over in Watford and go in there when it closed at 10, and you know, work till 9 in the morning, and then do that, you know, 2-3 times a week. So I'm used to the sort of, like I said, it's been my whole life, you know, nearly 30 odd years now, doing that. So it's just a different kind. It's more the stress. It's a different kind of stress, and there's a lot of responsibility, a bit more than, you know, sort of, you know, sitting in the studio and trying to write songs or driving around DJing.
It's not just the creative side, is it? Like you hinted, you know, like with the orders and stuff like that, making sure that you've got all of the right food in and things like that.
Yeah.
And then you've got
it's the first time I had to manage people. I mean, I had staff working under me. I've always worked for myself. I've never had that before. In fact, when I started working there, I think that was the first time I'd worked for somebody else in well over 20 years.
Wow.
Like well over 20 years.
Was that easy? How did you find managing people? Because that's another art form in itself, really, isn't it?
Totally. Oh, it's a fucking nightmare. Excuse my language. It's a nightmare. I mean, absolute nightmare. I'm not going to stop going into some of the stories. There's another time over a beer, I'll tell you. But I mean, it can be crazy, you know, having to deal with idiots and, you know, the rest of it. But, you know, I would be careful in what I'm saying now. But no, it's interesting. Like I said, when I first started working there, I was like, hold on, this is like the first job I've ever had since I was like a teenager. I think it's like 25 years, mate. Wow. I'm not 45, and it's like, look, yeah. So, I've done silly little, you know, jobs when I was a kid, but that was the first like proper job. You know, funny, isn't it? Yeah.
I was going to ask you guys, what's your favorite road less traveled? Like your favorite journey that you've ever had that you know that is a bit different or different to anything else that you've experienced? Give me some travel stories, best or worst.
Well, I mean, there's one. I mean, I can tell you one horror story.
I love horror stories.
I'll tell you horrors. Steve's shaking his head. It just involved a trip to Romania. And it was the caterpillar, actually, funnily enough, is named after that after that particular track after that particular journey. That was a road less traveled, that's for sure, wasn't it, Steve? We was doing about we don't know how many miles an hour we were going because the geezer speedometer was broken. I'm
interested in this caterpillar situation then, and how a caterpillar can come.
You know what it was, right?
How close to death were you?
Yeah, I think pretty close to death. Do you know what? I think any DJ that does gigs, sometimes they don't go as well as you want, and sometimes the people organising it are a little bit shabby, I'm going to say. And you just think to yourself, you find yourself in situations like, I think, why am I here? Like, why am I here? This is just ridiculous. And that was one of them situations. And it was the death drive back, what Mike's talking about, definitely. And the guy is like, he literally was zigzagging in and out of traffic. No speed, the whole thing was just absolutely terrifying and an absolute nightmare. That's basically that.
The gig was
pants as well.
It was this festival.
That's what I mean. It's like, why am I even here? It's pointless.
There was this hip hop band, a Romanian hip hop band, on before us, and it was absolutely packed. The field was packed. It was next to this beach, rammed, and all of the people, they knew the songs. Do you know what I mean? They were rapping to the songs and everything. And like, I turned around to Steve and I was like, we're done. We're done here. We're done here. There's no way we can.
Richard and Naomi as well.
As soon as they finished their last track, their DJ just stopped the music. They walked off stage and literally the whole place emptied. And we were like, oh my God.
Oh, no.
So then me and Steve just went on and played like a four decks old school jungle set with Viginobi on the mic. Yeah. It was a pretty mental one. Yeah, it was a pretty mental one. And then tried to get back was a nightmare. Absolute nightmare.
Wow. I've been to some of those gigs and been rolling with a DJ. Like, I've never played any of those type of gigs in my short history as a DJ, but I definitely can picture that. Was there anyone in the dance floor at all?
Yeah, I mean, there was still a few people left.
About 3 or 4 people out of about 2,000. It's just like, why? We were literally sitting there like, what? We were talking to Viginobi. We were like, why are we here? This is ridiculous. He was like, I've got to go, mate. I've got to go on stage. I've got to go on stage and talk to these people. And he's like, obviously in English as well. And then like, and just like, what were these people thinking? Why the hell am I here? You know. There you go. It's just, it's funny, man. Yeah.
Give me some more.
Anyway, it's called Caterpillar because I mean the thing basically was called something caterpillar along those lines. So anyway.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It looked like that. It's some Romanian word that looked like caterpillar.
Yeah, it looked like it.
That's what it was. Okay, so when I was 2016, I suppose it was touring my survival album. Just at the end of doing MasterChef, I had a gig booked in Bogota in Colombia. I basically couldn't get out of it. Couldn't get out of the filming schedule. So what we actually managed to be able to do is I ended up cooking for the judges to get into the final of MasterChef on Friday afternoon. Had to tell the producers I got a flight from Heathrow at like 7 o'clock. I need to literally leave as soon as we stop filming. So like did the whole sort of little interview thing after, did it first, had my suitcase right opposite me, ran out of that studio in Bow, got to Heathrow, flew on Friday night to Mexico City, stayed there for about 5 hours, then to Colombia, got to Bogota at 10 in the morning, kept my body clock on English time, played the DJ gig in Bogota, got back on the plane at 11 o'clock the next morning, flew back to Mexico City, back to London, and then the next day went and cooked for the American ambassador in Regent's Park. And it wasn't just American ambassador, it was like Boris Johnson's sister. It was Jamal Edwards was there. Who else? John King from the Ritz. It was quite mad. I mean, it's sort of, again, and you can see when you sort of look back on it, you can see just like I hadn't slept for 2 days. I'd literally flown the width and the length of the Atlantic, literally from London. I think I was in Colombia 12 hours, something like that. And yeah, and yeah, and I felt it as well. But obviously, the producers of the show and that, they were like, they didn't really know what to do. They're like, well, hold on, if your flight gets you miss your flight, if flight gets delayed, obviously they got a filming schedule. They can't sort of rearrange with stuff, and yeah, but it all worked out.
Wow.
Crazy,
Wow. And luckily the flights then that all did come together then, but you must have been crossing your fingers and crossing toes and just praying that everything runs according to plan.
I remember sitting in Mexico City Airport thinking, why isn't my plane? Why isn't the board changing? Why isn't the board changing? No one really talking English. I got my Spanish kind of consists of 2 beers, please. That's about it, really. And I'm like just sitting there, just started panicking. I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, it still says the flight's like there's a flight delayed. And then sort of I managed to, I can't remember. Someone sitting next to me. I sort of asked him to speak English. He's like, yeah, don't look at that. The main board in Mexico City Airport. Now that hasn't worked for ages, mate. That doesn't even work. Your flight's around the corner. It's like you have to go. I can't even remember it properly, but yeah. But it all worked out in the end. Yeah.
Wow.
It was a bit of a crazy. I then flew to South Africa 2 days later as well.
Wow. Go on. I mean, that's a life less traveled, not a road less traveled. I don't think anybody in all my interviews I've ever had an anecdote which manages to span so many continents and so many people and 2 very, very different disciplines in that type.
Well, I was sort of sitting there thinking, because when you sort of obviously did that thing for the ambassador, and I think it was 1 or 2 more rounds, and then you go away. So 2 more days. I think 2 days later, and then they don't tell you where you're going. So we sort of, I did quite well in that round, and it's like, right, you're definitely going away. I was chatting to other contestants. I said, anyhow, I'm going back to South America. I swear to God. And weirdly, they actually did that the year after me. Went to Peru, but they were like, no, we ended up going to South Africa on that safari thing. They nearly killed me by making us cook in the desert at 40 degrees. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, traveling all that way earlier that week as well probably didn't help. But I literally almost passed out. In fact, we had to pull the car over, and luckily one of the girls was a doctor, didn't pass out. But I had the worst cramps from dehydration I've ever had in my life.
Wow, that's pushing yourself to the very, very limit there, really. And then I guess that, bringing it back now to the Scar project, that must make like what you guys do together in this aspect of your life so much more, certainly during that point as well, when things were incredibly hectic in that way with lots of air miles and travel and stuff like that and intensity. And this kind of opening up of a new world for you. That must have put even more value in the sessions that you 2 do together, bringing you back down to earth, hanging out with a mate and doing something that you love and no pressure, in that
of course way. Yeah, definitely. It's just something we enjoy, isn't it? So it's always good to do that.
Because I was going to say, this album and everything that you do is a story of friendship, really, in that type of way. That's always the vibe that I've got off you 2 together and off your music, really. Then especially this one, I think, because of everything that we've been through. It's now 3 albums deep as well. This is a story, Scar is a story of friendship in a really kind of cliched, nice and cheesy, wholesome type of way.
Yeah, definitely so. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we're good.
And you're already sitting on even more tunes by the sounds of things from the first revelation of this interview. As we wrap up now, you've got another album already.
I wouldn't say it's an album, but we've got music that we'll be looking to put out in the new year. We've also got because obviously the road less traveled, we were faced with a decision earlier this year. It was to either delay it another year or put it out as digital only. So it was a hard decision for both of us, but or for everyone involved really, because we always want a body like that to come out on vinyl. So we were like, look, we just want to get the music out there. I think that was the number one important thing at that time. So we did that, but we've just finished 6 VIPs. We've got 3 artists doing 3 VIPs, and then we've done 3 ourselves from 6 of our favorite tunes. We've literally just okayed that with the guys this week actually. So it's all kind of been signed off. And that'll be coming out on vinyl, next year, I want to say.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Cool.
At some point. So that'll be the first thing, more than likely, that comes out from us after the post album. But yeah, we've got a good folder of music, sort of just sitting on at the moment, and sort of just letting it sort of sit and fester, and we'll work out what to do with that soon.
Yeah. The festering time is a really important part of the creative process as well, because that's things stand the test of time, don't they?
I think you hear things with a different set of ears, like completely. That whole thing Mike was saying, we start something and we're like, okay, look, I've had enough for today. Let's go and listen about it next week, and turn it on. It's like, yeah, shit, mate. What the fuck are you thinking of? You know what I mean? But sometimes that week off or that few days, we'll be like, yeah, no, that's not right. Same with the cooking, same with the photography, actually. And sometimes you have that break and have that sort of that time to sort of let something stand, forget about it for a little while, stop listening to it. You get ear blind, or you get eye blind, or taste blind. All the same thing. Your ears just get used to something.
I think that's one of the benefits of doing like a weekly session, or like what it's to allow that time to breathe, to rest, and then go back to it. Quite the way we work as well is we don't tend to just do marathon sessions in the studio. It's like we'll sit down, we'll have a chat for an hour, then we'll go and then we'll start the creative process going for a couple of hours, and we'll go. Steve will want to try out a new recipe on me and help me add some more weight to my already very sizable frame. Generally, it's normally fat, cooked in fat, marinated in fat, but tastes fantastic. And then we'll get back in, and so it's like a 4 or 5 hour process in the studio, but not like constant. And then we'll go back a week later, and I think that time allows us to take a step back and then look at things. And Steve says you do go ear blind. You can go ear blind very, very easily, and I think it's not the way we work.
Better way of putting it.
Doesn't mean that everyone works that way. But that's just the way that we find that we work.
I don't know. I'm going to say, from my experience and all the people I work with, I think it's a pretty universal thing, and I think, especially you talk to sound engineers or mastering engineers, those people, you're sort of concentrating on real small, tiny elements, and it's easy to focus on something and lose the whole big picture. So sometimes we will probably work 2 hours, stop, 2 hours, stop. Probably not doing more than 5, 6 hours max anymore in one session, and then coming back and sort of finishing it, whether it's a week later, or as in the case with some of these tunes, revisiting them after a couple of years, a year.
I think it's a shift in perspective as well, isn't it? A shift in perspective, and it just gives you that kind of time, and any type, because then you're coming from a different context, so you're going to hear it or see it or read it or listen to it or taste it in a different way. And it can work the other way as well. You can go away from something thinking, well, that was shit, and then come back to it 5 days later or a week later and think, oh, actually, I was onto something there.
I think that's generally what we find. Yeah, I'd say that's what we find more than the opposite. And it's like, I'm fucking sick of this. I'm sick of it. I just can't do this anymore. Yeah. This is crap. Let's just stop, and we'll come back next week. And and then you turn it on and you go, oh, actually, sick. Yeah, sick. And it's like, I know exactly what to do. I know exactly how to finish this. Boom, boom, done, dusted, and sort of move on. That happens a lot. I think you just get sick of it, and you just think, oh, especially if something doesn't quite happen. Right? You have to sort of work at a tune. And, you have to work in trying to find things that go fit, and then nothing's working. A baseline sounds rubbish, or when especially when that starts to happen, and it happens, then it's this time to go. Nah, let's just put that to one side, and then just leave it, and then
On the other side of the coin, for me personally, it's a bit different for Steve, obviously, but for me personally. When I go to the studio, I want to make sure that that day hasn't gone to waste. That we've come out with something tangible. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's something great that's tangible, but I want to know that we've worked and we've done something, whether it's succeeded or failed. Doesn't matter to me. I just want to know that we've done something. I want to know that I've spent that time, or we spent that time trying to create. I mean, there are times that we get together and it just doesn't work regardless. Do you know what I mean? There are times, but in general, I do find that we do get quite a lot out of our sessions. I think if you work with somebody every single day, it might not be like that, but for us, that's how I find it works. Well, for me, that's how I find it works with our relationship. I do like to get something out of it, and quite often, like a few days later, I'll phone Steve up and go, I'll listen to that tune, and actually, there's this in it, or he might hit me up and go, actually, this, or we might go, you know what, this needs something else. And also, there's one other thing that I want to say, right? Something that Steve's taught me, like. And something that I've learned over all the years is mustn't be so precious about tunes. When I first started this, I was really, 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 really precious about everything, about the whole creative process. But at the same time, now you mustn't be so precious about tunes, and he's taught me that. And so I'm not so defensive when he's like, I don't think this is working, or do you know what I mean? I've managed to be able to let go of things. I think it's coming a bit left field. I think that's a really important part of this whole creative process, is to know when it's time to let go as well. Do you know what I mean? When you've got a lot going on, it's important to let go of certain things and move on, and not be
so every precious. Tune is going to be completed, but it's all part of a journey towards something else, because without having done that, you wouldn't have had the other idea, which has led to this and then led to that, which did lead to a tune, that. Really. It's all
I think I like to finish tunes. So I mean, I think in this computer, I reckon there's like 3 or 4 unfinished things out of the, I reckon, couple of hundred, maybe more. I don't know. God knows.
Wow.
Even if it's shit, even if it's not very good, right? Even if it's like, it is what it is. And I think that's what kind of Mike was talking about. It's just like, you start a tune, it is what it is. Let's finish it and let's move on to something else. And I might go back and, if it's not going anywhere, you might just go back and nick the drums out of it or nick something that's good. But generally, it's a kind of discipline. I think it's really important, especially as an artist as well. Finishing music can be the hardest thing in the world. And I think, a lot of people get stuck in the loops and all this kind of stuff. And it's just for me and for when we work as well, it's just get the tune finished, just roll it out, even if it's not going to like be the best tune in the world. When you get stuck on that thing, you get stuck, and that's what I think Mike was just referring to as well. You get stuck. It's like, oh, this could be better. This could be better. It's like, well, let's just write another tune. Let's just finish that tune. Let's not beat up and spend weeks, flogging a dead horse, if you like. You know what I mean? Or if it ain't working, it ain't working. But let's finish it and put it to one side, and then we can start something else. And then if it doesn't go anywhere, there might be elements that you think, actually, no, do you know what? This was quite good in this. This was good. Let's just teeth that out of there and stick it in another tune. But I think always finishing tunes, and I think that's whenever talk to younger producers or people trying to sort of get into it, I think that's the most, almost the most important thing. Get into that habit of finishing things.
Finish it and learn something. Yeah, especially for me, I've learned
really good discipline.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I think one of the big, when I talk to other people, that can be the hardest thing. So getting that mindset from early on is really good.
Because it's so much more fun to start something. It's so much more fun to have that idea and to start something. And that's how most people I know end up with hard drives just full of whips. And I've got a hard drive just full of different story ideas and kind of random bits of text which I've thought of, but they're not flourished and not actually really put my head into and thought, right, how is this going to develop and stuff? And that's the fun is always the idea creation, the spark. It's seeing it all the way through, isn't it?
I think some of the killers, some of the studio killers, is when you realise what you've got to do, and that could be like, oh fuck, I can't be bothered, and it's just like.
I guess that's the beauty of having two of you, though. You can kick each other up the arse in that way and drive each other to actually finish things.
We argue more.
We are. I mean, it's all done in jest, really. But we do kick each other's arse. I think we need to kick each other's arse, really.
So it does sound like you're just going to crack on. A lot of people after an album will get tired. I want to leave the studio for a little while, or leave the process, or not talk to each other in a collaborative situation and just leave things be for a little while. You guys are just cracking on. It's business as usual by the seams of
it. I mean, we've already done that. That cycle's already done its thing. You know
The
what
thing
I mean?
is, Dave,
We've
we
had,
have
our
those
break.
cycles. We have those cycles like every 3 or 4 months anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's
I've
like
avoided them for a little while and then just back into it.
Yeah. It's like that phone call come on. I suppose it's time for us to get back in the studio. I mean, look, no, but
it's always
business
as usual now, though.
It's business as usual at the moment, yeah. But I think it's important to take little breaks as well. Do you know what I mean? And we do. You've got to. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, we're cracking on at the moment.
Brilliant. I can't wait to hear what comes next, and congratulations on another awesome album. So thank you very much, Scripts. Thank you very much, Survival. And thank you to everybody who has watched this interview. If you enjoyed it, then please like it and subscribe to the channel and tell your friends and tell your nan about it and all that type of stuff that YouTubers seem to say. Thank you very much, guys. Enjoy your weekend. And it's been a real pleasure chatting to you.
Big up, Dave. You're a legend. Thanks, man.
Nice one.
One more thing. One more thing. One more thing.